The C-SPAN Civics bus is traveling the country, visiting libraries, bookstores, festivals, and authors. Here are some of the people and places we visited.
We're here at the St. Petersburg Times Festival of Reading talking with Alexandra Kerry about her book, Notes from the Trail, Presidential Politics from the Inside Out. Alexandra, you formatted the book with, it's part autobiography and part a collection of photographs. Why did you decide to do it that way?
I think because for me, most of the images that I caught and captured during that period of time were through the lens of the video camera. So the first interpretation from the book were the 300 hours captured, and then I used stills from that for the book. And then I also curated other journalists' images, people who were friends of mine whose perspectives I wanted to also publish.
How did you decide on what images you were going to use?
That was a long selective process. Some of it just had to do with resolution and what seemed to be most compelling. And then I also wanted it to be less about the candidate and more about the people who came around it. So it's more of a cross-section and a story about America than it is really about him. And then there was an editorial design process in terms of how we were going to interpret and incorporate the imagery.
In your preface, one of the things you say is that the imagery of presidential politics and the photographs and the video that the media captures, that they're reinforcing preconceived notions of who these candidates are. Can you tell us what you mean by that and maybe how it relates to what you put together in your book?
I think that I hate to make huge generalizations about the media, but there definitely was a system that I observed, and there was a sort of understanding and a feeling of how the world worked within the campaign process that I came to know very much as an outsider and very green. So certainly there's not a detailed description. It's more about observation and articulating what people observe. And when I say detailed description, I mean a detailed description from a very I would say seasoned reporter, more about what it's like to be thrown into it and what those first perceptions are when you're put inside the bubble, so to speak.
And what was your relationship like with the media during the time your father was running?
I thought it was a positive. I think they were very supportive of my sister and I, and a lot of people I was friends with, people who were my contemporaries who were in the media. Some people I had personal relationships with, and others just more distanced by virtue of the way the dynamic is set up.
And did you have a favorite experience during your time helping your father?
Oh, I don't know how I would characterize that. I definitely had lots of favorites, but they tended to be more of the more immediate, strange, sort of surreal interactions than they were some grand, grand experience that would probably be easy to describe.
Did you have a least favorite experience, or maybe not even experience, but just aspect of the whole process?
I would say probably election night wasn't the most fun of all the 24-hour periods of time. That might have been the most difficult.
Okay. What role do you think families play in presidential politics, and do you feel that that's a role that's deserving, and maybe about yours specifically?
I think it's a cautious role. It was one that I was thrown into, and so I tried to become part of a political system that I didn't completely understand at the time in terms of how intricately it affected so many people around the country, and I thought of it much more centrally in the home state I grew up in, so it was interesting to be thrown into a national system and to see what it was like to travel through 33 states and really understand the process in a different level. I think in terms of being a family member, it's unique, and there's a fine line that one has to really walk in terms of keeping one's own perspective and one's own life, and then also engaging in something that's really greater than you.
Maybe touching upon that, how did you deal with some of the negativity that would come out, that inevitably comes out during a presidential campaign?
I think that the negativity is really part of the system, and it's part of a contest scenario. I think this time around there's been negativity, but it's been kept a little bit more in perspective. Maybe I've just lost perspective, and so it seems normal to me to have the trading of punches in some ways. But I don't know. I think it's a different experience each time around. It's hard to make a generalization.
Having been part of the bubble, as you describe it, how honest is the media's portrayal of of both the campaign and maybe how honest is the candidate and his family himself in presenting himself to the American public?
I think that the candidates actually try to be very honest. Obviously that there's something that happens when you become part of a larger process. I mean, the candidate themselves, and that they become a symbol of a party and they represent time and the zeitgeist, so it becomes more difficult maybe to define oneself because so many people are projecting their ideas and their expectations on you. But I think that I would say in either party, most people are probably attempting to be some version of themselves as truthfully as possible.
What have you been working on? What are you working on now?
I work for a media company. I'm running their film division and an editor in a magazine, and then I'm in development and 2 features right now. I'm actually flying tonight from here to go to Gina, Louisiana to shoot for a documentary, so I'm on the road again, I guess.
Are you active at all in the 2008 campaigns?
I have been. I've been sort of behind the scenes, more of a phone baking, canvassing, going to places around New York, Pennsylvania when it was up for grabs, and now in these final weeks I'll probably participate, but not in the same way.
Well, thank you so much. We've been talking with Alexandra Kerry on her book, Notes from the Trail, Presidential Politics from the Inside Out.
Thanks.
You can view Book TV programs, sign up for a weekly email of our schedule, and learn about upcoming programs at booktv.org. You can click on the Viewer Input tab and email us. Tell us what you're reading and what you think of our programs.